Hey guys, welcome back. So today I want to address the question that I've been asked and I've seen many people discussing over the years on the internet and in gun shops. Are revolvers viable self-defense tools in a modern age? And I'm going to share my opinions on that. I'm going to talk about my views on the strengths and weaknesses of each, being the revolver versus the automatic. And then at the end of the video, I'll weigh in and tell you whether or not I think it makes sense, if it's a wise decision to choose a revolver over a more modern self-loading pistol. With that being said, in my hands I have a Smith & Wesson Model 19. This is a current production handgun. We ran a gun just like this through the gauntlet, and Big Daddy Unlimited supplied the handgun for that video, and then that gun was given away, and we recently announced that winner on Instagram and Facebook. But the Model 19 has an interesting history. This is a gun that was popular in its original form with police departments. It was a relatively small handgun for the full power 357 Magnum cartridge, and it was, again, quite popular. And police departments in the United States continued to issue revolvers all the way up through the 80s. It wasn't really until the 1990s that the majority of police departments started to switch to self-loading pistols. These things served well past World War I, when most of the world's militaries were moving away from revolvers and moving to automatic pistols. And by World War II, obviously, most nations were using automatics versus revolvers. Revolvers were relegated to non-frontline troops or as stopgap measures because they couldn't produce enough automatic pistols, so they would produce revolvers from other factories just to make sure they had enough weapons for the war effort. With that being said, let's start off shooting this. I have some 38 specials in it. The nice thing about the 357 Magnum is you can carry full power loads for self-defense, or you can practice with 38 specials, which don't have the recoil and blast and don't have the cost associated with it either for practice. Now, pistols like this are both single and double action. You'll notice I just cocked it, and it has a very light single action trigger pull. Lends itself well to accuracy work, and then double action. Neat pistols, and I really enjoy the Model 19. I have an older version, a Dash 4, that I've enjoyed for 30 years. All right, so let's talk about the revolver versus the automatic and what I think makes the most sense. Guys, please swing by and check out Big Daddy Unlimited, BDU. They help support us here at the Military Arms Channel with products and things like that so we can continue to bring you content. There's a link in the video description down below that'll take you to the Mac blog and website. Please follow that link, and from there you'll find a link to Big Daddy Unlimited, and try them out just for 99 cents. You can see what they're all about. In essence, they're just like a big online store that has amazing prices. So please, again, check out BDU. By World War I, many of the world's largest militaries were moving to automatic or self-loading pistols like this German Luger. The Luger holds 8 rounds in a single stack magazine. Fires 9mm, but you'll find them in other calibers. But the 9mm Luger would have been used by the German military, both in World War I and World War II, even though more modern pistols would be adopted in 1938, the P38 specifically from Walther. But the Luger is an early turn-of-the-century design self-loading pistol that uses a toggle locking system. Now, in terms of reliability, I know that the guys over at In-Range TV did a mud test on a Luger, and it passed with flying colors, but in general, anybody that collects and shoots Lugers know that they're a little bit finicky. They're not necessarily the most reliable example of a self-loading pistol. However, they're elegant and a lot of fun to shoot, and at the turn of the century, it was quite a modern pistol, but it would be quickly eclipsed by other designs, rendering this gun by World War II mostly obsolete, and German officers and stuff that would carry it is more or less of a status symbol. So the Luger has a really exaggerated grip angle, but it's just a pleasant gun to shoot. It ejects straight up out the top. You can see the toggle has locked open on the last shot fired. Push a button, put another magazine in it, and it's ready to go for more. So one of the key advantages to the self-loading pistol was the fact that you could store ammunition in magazines, and reloading the pistol was very quick, especially in World War II era type firearms and World War I era type firearms. So instead of handling individual rounds, you could load magazines, keep them on your person, and quickly load the weapon and keep it fighting versus stumbling around and trying to load individual rounds into a cylinder. So that was one of the key advantages of early automatic pistols. Let's take a look at another pistol that was used by the US military. This is John Browning's masterpiece, and this is an actual World War I era Colt government model. This is an actual service pistol with US property marks on it. This handgun was designed and adopted right around 1911, and it was used by US forces in World War I, but because we couldn't produce them fast enough, the United States would also go on to produce other firearms, namely revolvers like the 1917, both Colt and Smith & Wesson revolvers, to supplement the shortage of 1911 pistols. But clearly the trend was to move towards self-loading pistols. This gun holds 7 rounds in that era's magazine. Of course, more modern magazines will hold 1 extra round. And troops at the time were instructed to carry the gun with a loaded magazine in the grip, but not one in the chamber and cocked and locked like we do with modern 1911s. The hammer would have been carried down on an empty chamber because there's no safety on the firing pin, and so you had 7 rounds, which is really only 1 round more than a revolver. So you can't, again, argue that these guns had a capacity advantage over the revolvers in that era, but yet the automatic pistols were replacing revolvers. I don't shoot this old girl very much. She has all of her original springs in her. But yeah, and this handgun would go on to serve the US military for over 75 years. By the 1990s in the United States, we started to see the introduction of polymer frame striker fired pistols like the Glock, which really kind of set off the entire polymer framed pistol craze. And the Glock is one of the pistols that kind of nudged police departments into start carrying automatic pistols versus revolvers. The FBI had adopted Smith & Wesson 9mm pistols and then 10mm and all sorts of other stuff in between. But you started to see law enforcement moving again towards the adoption of pistols like this VP9, which is an extremely modern version of a polymer frame striker fired pistol. And so by the time we get into the 1990s, polymer frame pistols generally would have a double stack magazine. So the capacity went from 7 rounds in a 1911 to handguns that can carry up to 19+1 rounds in a full-size serviced handgun. So now the automatics definitely had an advantage over the revolvers in terms of capacity. Even in the 1990s, it wasn't uncommon for people to carry single stack 9mm and 45s and even 10mm, but we did see, the Model 59s, 659s and things like that with the double stack magazines catching on, and ultimately that would be the future of modern handgunning. High capacity magazines, and I know you're going to say standard capacity, but in relation to original single stacks, these would be considered higher capacity than the single stack versions that they would go on to replace for most people. Some people still prefer a single stack because it's smaller, thinner, and some people feel it carries a little bit better than a thicker handgun like this with its double stack magazine. So when we get into handguns like this, 9mm really kind of settled in to being the most popular handgun cartridge out there for not only civilians, but the world's militaries. Right now in 2020, when we're filming this, pretty much all the world's major militaries use a 9mm handgun. It's just taken over, and there's a reason for that. 9mm offers a nice balance between power, capacity, recoil, management, and troops being able to use it effectively. So things like 10mm and full power loads really don't make much sense for a military or even for law enforcement. The FBI tried that, didn't work out well for them. So we saw a settling pretty much on the 9mm cartridge. 40 Smith & Wesson obviously was an alternative to the 9mm that a lot of people adopted, but now we're starting to see that pendulum swing more in favor of the 9mm once again. So yeah, by the time we get here, this gun definitely has an advantage over a revolver in terms of capacity. While automatic pistols, especially in the modern age, have the advantage of capacity over modern revolvers, and you've seen revolvers go to 8, maybe even 9 rounds in a cylinder. I don't keep up with the revolvers all that much. I like more traditional revolvers like the Model 19, but revolvers have tried to stay relevant. For the most part, they have. As a matter of fact, the gun I have in my front pocket right now is a revolver, and it's a gun that you will oftentimes find me carrying because of the convenience of it. This is a Smith & Wesson Model 340 PD. You've seen it here on the channel before. It does chamber 357 Magnum, and in that case, this thing is a hand cannon. Muzzle flash, recoil. It has a scandium frame. I mean, the thing is just 11 ounces of horsepower in a tiny package. I mean, it's just an amazing little gun. It's double action only. It doesn't have an exposed hammer. And so this gun lends itself to pocket carry. Very lightweight, even when loaded. I have 38 specials in it currently. Very small, and it is reliable. Now you'll notice, like on the inside of the trigger guard here, you're going to see a buildup of lint. And this we'll talk about more when we get into my views on reliability of revolvers versus automatics. But I do like revolvers. Again, I carry this handgun quite often when I just want to throw something in sweats and run down to the corner store or something. I'll just throw my 340 PD in my pocket. Jason, the cameraman, also carries a Smith & Wesson Airweight all the time, and he just told me that it's the gun that he's carried the most for the longest period of time. So yes, you will find us carrying revolvers. A lot of people think I hate them, but I don't. This little gun definitely has an application, at least for me. Now, we do have an interesting video out there talking about snub-nose revolvers and 9mm and 38 Special. I highly recommend you go watch that video because there's some interesting information in that video. We're not going to delve into that here, though. So this little tiny guy, even with 38 Specials, that's a little bit of a handful. It doesn't hurt to shoot, though, at the 38s. It only holds 5 rounds. It's a very small cylinder. But with a speed loader, you could quickly reload it if you needed to. But this gun's real advantage is its small size, extreme lightweight, and that double action trigger pull. I can stick it in a pocket without a holster and not have to worry about shooting myself in the leg. Now, a lot of people will tell you not to carry a gun outside of a holster in your pocket, but double action pistols like this have been carried by people for a long, long time, well over 100 years in pockets, and that's one of the benefits of double action only pistols like this. See that?
I did.
My 340 PD is hanging up. It's getting dirty on the inside from the lint probably, but that was 2 times there where the trigger hung up and I couldn't pull the trigger and rotate the cylinder. I have to take her apart and clean her. Revolvers don't have an exclusivity on small size and lightweight. Automatic pistols are also offered in very small sizes and lightweight offerings. In my front pocket, I have a self-loading pistol now, and this is my little Car 380 pocket pistol. I've had this handgun for quite some time. Now, this handgun is a double action only, much like the revolver. So again, it doesn't need a manual safety, which it does lack because its safety is that long, heavy trigger pull. This one holds 6 rounds in the magazine. Get it out there. Holds 6 rounds of 380. And I have 1 in the chamber, but I can top it off and put 7 rounds in it technically, and it would be safe to do so because of its double action only trigger. So as you can see, when it comes to size and weight, pretty comparable. The only downside to the revolver, it might print a little bit more in a pocket because of its cylinder. The car's less than 1 inch thick. Obviously, the revolver is thicker, but when it comes to overall size and weight, these two pistols are very, very comparable. The biggest difference is 38 Special is a more potent caliber than 380, but don't sneeze at 380. It's a very effective pocket pistol caliber. It's been used to great effect for a long, long time. When comparing those pocket pistols, the revolver and the autoloader are pretty comparable in terms of size and weight. There's a difference there, obviously, in how fast they can each be reloaded by an average person, and there is a slight advantage in terms of capacity when we talk about pocket pistols, automatic versus revolver, generally speaking. So where does the revolver shine? If the automatic pistol's real claim to fame is light recoil and magazine capacity, then what does the revolver offer in contrast to that? Well, the revolver offers power. This is a Smith & Wesson Model 69. This is a 5-shot 44 Magnum. I like this pistol because it's roughly the same size as the Model 19 357 Magnum, which is a 6-shot revolver. But this thing is in 44. This is a bruiser. Now, if you take a look at the grip design, how it has this hump here, and where that engages with your hand, most of this energy gets transferred through that hump right into the middle of your hand, and it is not pleasant to shoot full power loads, which these are. These are 44 Magnum, and these are offered by Federal, and Federal ammunition is what we're shooting out here this afternoon. We would like to thank our friends over at Federal for supplying the ammunition free of charge to the channel. It certainly helps us in creating content for you guys. So, a 5-shot 44 Magnum in a handgun, roughly about the same size as a Model 19. So this thing definitely has more power than a 9mm. But is that power really useful when we're talking about self-defense? We'll probably delve into that here a little bit more later in the video. But when it comes to things like self-defense from critters, say you live in Alaska and you want a handgun to, defend yourself from bear and things like that. Do you want a 9mm or do you want a 44 Magnum? Or, I'll show you another caliber here in a moment, you may want if bears are your primary concern. All right, so the Model 69 is a really neat little pistol. I like the size of it, but that recoil is nothing to scoff at. But it lays the hate down on that steel plate. The concussion off this thing, just the blast, is so significant. It's unbelievable. Oh, I just snorted, I'm laughing. I love this gun. Okay, so this gun is really digging into my palm right there, and when it recoils back, the trigger guard is whacking my middle finger. So shooting a steady diet of 44 Magnums out of this handgun would take some getting used to. It's not impossible, and you can shoot 44 Smith & Wesson, 44 Special out of this handgun, which, much like the 38 Special and 357 Magnum, is going to bring that recoil down so you can carry full power loads like this for defense against animals or, two-legged varmint as well, if you're going after power over capacity. So let's talk about going to the extremes of the power spectrum that revolvers can go to that automatics just simply can't keep up with. All right, so I'm talking about horsepower, just raw power. Revolvers clearly have the advantage over automatics. Now, there are novelty self-loading pistols out there like the Desert Eagle in 50 AE, but I would prefer to carry a revolver over that particular handgun. That handgun, in my view, is mostly a toy and a range gun. It's not something I would seriously consider for self-defense, even in bear country. If I want to go to the extremes of the power spectrum, you can pick up a handgun like this. This is a Smith & Wesson 460. It shoots artillery. Now, this is a very capable caliber. You can go a step up from here. There is the 500 Smith & Wesson, which is a similar sized revolver. I like the 460 because it gives me 3 different caliber choices from factory loadings: 45 Long Colt, 454 Casual, and 460. So that's why I like this particular handgun. We did a video on this handgun and other powerhouse handguns previously. Where we shot some stuff. It was pretty fun. You should also check that video out. So if you want something in bear country and you just want the ultimate in power, you're not going to find anything that compares to something like this. This would be as reliable as I could possibly get. I would say this is far more reliable in my experience than the Desert Eagles. And yeah, these things are just amazing. But it comes at the price of recoil. I think I'm going to break that 2x4 down there. Only holds 5 rounds. Look at that muzzle flash. All right. Woo! Now, one thing you want to do when shooting cannons like this, because these things have their own unique gotchas. First of all, the cylinder release, keep your thumb away from that, because when this thing recoils, it will smack you in the end of the thumb and it will hurt. The other thing you have to be careful of with cannons like this is this gap right here between the cylinder and the face of the barrel in the cylinder. And that's called cylinder gap, and it has hot gases coming out of there, and if you get your hands up there, a thumb by there, you can really hurt yourself. So you want to make sure you grip these types of cannons properly, but if you do, there's just no comparison to this type of a handgun when it comes to just raw power. So let's bring the conversation full circle back around to reliability. Revolvers and automatics, how do they stack up to each other in terms of reliability? Well, we did the recent gauntlet tests, and some people would say, and fairly so, that those tests aren't scientific. But the revolver definitely had problems that you just don't see with automatics. The thing with many revolvers like this Smith & Wesson is that they have very delicate lockwork inside of them. And that lockwork is exposed. And some people would argue that point, but it is. The cylinder interfaces with that lockwork. And if you take this handgun and abuse it, drop it onto concrete from any height whatsoever, or if you get in a fight and it gets chucked across the concrete and you're fighting over the gun, things like that can knock these weapons out of time. Now, they may still fire, but they may not fire, as we saw in the gauntlet video when it was placed in sand and dirt and things like that. So when it comes to abusive torture of a gun, a revolver, I don't care what your argument is, simply is not as reliable as an automatic pistol. In my experience, I've shot a lot of revolvers. At one point, I shot revolvers more than I did automatic pistols because I shot in an indoor range in Illinois, and I reloaded everything back then. And so revolvers are handy for reloading because you don't have to pick your brass up off the floor. And so I shot a lot of revolvers. But in doing that, I also discovered many weaknesses of the revolver. With high round count revolvers that you don't know enough about to take the side plates off and properly clean and maintenance them, they can malfunction. And when they malfunction, you better have a backup. Because when a revolver goes down, it's done. It's out of the fight. There's no tap, rack, bang. And with an automatic, even with ammunition problems, things that would take a revolver out of the fight, like a primer backing out or a cartridge that isn't properly crimped and a bullet walking out of the case, any of those things can jam the revolver up. Brass shavings can get into the lockwork, which I've had happen on a Model 29 Smith & Wesson of mine I shot quite frequently. And it locked the entire gun up. I had to take the side plate off of it to get it to unlock so I could even open the cylinder. So when revolvers go down, generally speaking, in extreme environments, they're down for the count. You better have a backup gun. Unless you break apart on an automatic pistol, you're just going to have to tap, rack, bang. That includes ammunition irregularities or failures to fire, a round that's loaded too long in the case or anything like that, or if the gun just stumbles because you were running, the gun with something touching the slide or whatever, tap, rack, bang. Even if it's a single shot, you can still get the gun firing again, where many times the revolver just can't. So in extreme situations, the nod goes to the automatic pistol, which is why you see the world's militaries using automatic pistols. Even back when they only held 7 rounds or 8 rounds, they opted for autoloaders because they are easier to maintain in the field and they resist extreme conditions better than revolvers did of that era or even in the modern era. But that's not to say that a gun like this is a poor choice for self-defense carry. It isn't. This, just like my 340 PD that I frequently carry, is a fine defensive handgun because you're not likely to find it laying on the ground. If you have a proper holster and have a cover garment over it, the gun's mostly protected. And you're not even likely to use your weapon in self-defense in the United States. You're more likely to carry it for 40 years and die of old age before the gun actually gets used for its purpose of self-defense. So revolvers, I believe, do make good carry firearms, and it's a personal preference, as is most things in life. But arguing that the revolver is as rugged as the automatic is just not a valid argument in my mind, and I can't see how anybody that thinks logically, that truly understands how the two different firearms work, could argue that, or somebody that's actually used them in extreme conditions or has high round counts through both. So that's my opinion. Opinions vary, and many of you are going to oppose my opinion in this video, but I look forward to reading those comments down below because I do listen to what others have to say. And if you can make a valid argument, I'll say, yeah, you know what? You're right. I will give you that point. So please comment down below, guys. It does help us with the algorithms. Also, if you'd like to see more videos like this, consider becoming a Patreon supporter. We're supported by you, our viewing audience, not by the gun companies. So if you'd like to become a Patreon supporter, there's a link in the video description below. Click that link and you'll get access to early release of videos, access to us for direct communications, and behind-the-scenes information. Also, conversely, alternatively, I should say, you can join right here on YouTube. Underneath the video player you're watching right now, there's a little join button. Click that join button and support us here on YouTube. And last but not least, guys, please swing by and check out coppercustom.com. Thank you for 12 years of support, and if you carry a revolver, do so proudly. I like to carry a 1911. I think that's more taboo than carrying a revolver these days. We'll talk to you guys soon.